Okay, we have just hit the 3 o'clock time in the UK. Welcome to our release webinar to celebrate the Sage People 25.2 release. If you have any questions or issues about using the webinar at all, we do have a handout available in the chat section. So there's a chat button right at the top. If you click on that and scroll up slightly, you'll see some housekeeping things around how to get the Teams app and things like that on your phone if you are struggling. We do have a Q&A section as well. So there's a Q&A button. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, do write them in there. We have someone watching. I'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, welcome to the webinar. My name is Kay Lucock. I am a Customer Success Manager in the technical team. I am joined today by Lucy Alban, who's also a Success Manager. And together we're going to take you through the new features and functionality available in this release. We have with us a technical expert who's going to be answering questions. So anything you put in your Q&A, Matt will be there to answer. We will publish those questions at the end onto our community. We will try and get some time for open questions to discuss them on the call, but if we do run out of time, because there's a lot of great functionality, we will just be relying on the publishing of them later on. So fabulous. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Lucy, who's going to take you through what this webinar is going to have for us.
Perfect. Thank you, Kay. So just getting into to set the scene on this release, really. So just wanted to talk about voice of the customer, which is something that we've been speaking about for a while, ever since the Customer Ideas Hub came into place. And just show you some highlights. So from this release, we have got 14 ideas from the Customer Ideas Hub, which is really significant and great. 2 of those ideas are some of our most highly anticipated ideas. So by that, I mean they're in the top 10 highest voted ideas ever in the Customer Ideas Hub, and they account for a total of 147 votes. So just really shows the value of you guys going in there, logging your ideas, and making sure you vote on them. So please do keep continuing to do that. And then finally, we've got 4 more enhancements based on your feedback. So these are just things that you've told us would make your experience better, but not officially logged via the Customer Ideas Hub. So just to say, as I mentioned, your feedback really is shaping our roadmap. So let's keep it up, keep engaging with the Customer Ideas Hub. If you don't know how to access that, you can go to it via the community, but please do ask your Customer Success Manager if you're unsure. So now the features we are going to cover today. We have got the 2 that are based on those top 10 ideas are highlighted with a light bulb. So we've got the action event log and the time off colors. We're also going to go through updates to enhance objectives, an updated feature for files carryover from Recruit, HR request creation in the HR portal, which is in a beta phase, and then a little bit on our bug fixes. So with that, let's get started. As Kay mentioned, please do ask questions throughout in the Q&A section. We've got quite a tight agenda today, so might not have too much time to cover questions at the end, but we'll see how we go. Before I jump into the actual product demonstrations, just wanted to make you aware, before I have done any of the stuff I've done in this webinar today, I have actually gone and assigned some permissions to my systems admin in my trial org. I'm going to talk you through how to do that at the end. It's just not too exciting to show you, so I didn't want to start with that. It's just one of those things that you need to do, so just making you aware in case you're going to try and follow along on your screen. I have done some permission sets first, but we'll get to that shortly. Now, to start with the action event log, which is a super highly voted customer idea. The new action event log is a diagnostic tool within Sage People that records key details of action event emails. It's designed to help systems administrators and support teams test, validate, and troubleshoot action events. It's especially useful when configuring new events or investigating delivery issues. This tool can be used alongside the current Salesforce email log files, And also you might want to ensure you've Kim switched on to ensure solid email deliverability. So let's jump in and show you what this does. First of all, I'd like to take you into Setup. And then in the quick find on the left, you want to navigate to your installed packages. And if you scroll down, you should find an install package for Sage People Human Capital Management, and we want to click the Configure button on the left-hand side. The previous action event batch time setting used to sit at the top of the page around here. However, now we have some additional settings. It has its own section down here. Action email send batch time is a field that already existed within the install package. So I currently have mine set to 7 AM. However, the additional fields are purge action event batch time and action event log data retention. With these log files, it's going to create a lot of records, so one for each action event that is sent. So we want to ensure this information has some data retention settings so we can set it to purge automatically after a set time period. Whilst you can set this from 1 to 28 days, we recommend a period of 14 days. You can then choose what time this purge happens after 14 days. So I'm going to set mine for 8 PM. The Run Now button next to the Purge Action Event Batch Time field will, if you click it, purge all data looking at this data retention field, so records older than 14 days when the button is pressed, rather than waiting for 8 PM, the time I have set. However, if you would like to purge all existing log files, you can click the Purge Log button, and that will delete all log files, whether they've been there for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 15 days. So I'm just going to click Save there. Now that we've looked at the installed package settings, there's a couple more things we need to do to get started. You're best starting in the Object Manager and finding your Action Event Pattern object. If we click into this, we then want to navigate to Page Layouts and the Action Email Pattern Layout. You then want to look at this left-hand menu and find the option for Related Lists. Once you've clicked on there, you should see an option to add the Action Event Log Related List to your page layout. So I'm going to click this and drag it down to anywhere on the page. And it's just there. You may see that the Action Event Related List has a lot of fields on display as standard, but this one is blank. So if you want to see some additional fields, you can just click the settings icon and then add the relevant information. So I'm going to add event outcome error message, recipient and triggered by, and press OK. And I can see that additional information down here in the preview. You can then select Save. Whilst I'm in the Object Manager, I'm also going to go to the Action Event Log object. So if I just click into this now, I'm also going to go in the page layout for the Action Event Logs and click again into that page layout. I've got all these fields now that are available that don't currently exist in my page layout. So if you hold the Shift button on your keyboard and select Multiple, I'm going to drag the remaining items down to my page. You can order these as you please by dragging and dropping, but I'm going to leave mine as it is for now. I'm then going to click Save. If I go to my 9 dots and search for my action event patterns and click into my action event pattern for alert emails, I still can't see the related list for my action event logs. So now, because I'm in Lightning Page Layouts, I need to go into Setup and edit my page. You can add this page how you like, so you can either just drag and drop the related list onto the page anywhere you like. I'm actually going to create another tab so it's slightly hidden. So to do that, I click on this section, add tab, and then I'm going to change my tab label to related records, and then click done. I'm then going to click on that newly created tab and then drag across my related list. Now that has defaulted to the action event log. Luckily, if it defaulted to something else like groups, I can then just delete that out and type in action event logs and it will populate. I'm then going to click the save button and back. You can now see I've got a related records tab and my action event logs. If I click into my action event logs, there is nothing there as it stands because none of my action events have generated since enabling the log. So what I'm going to do now is trigger an action event. So just to look at my action event that I've already got for HR request new, it's got an email template linked. It's sending to team member home. Bit of a strange setup, but I'm just using it for the purposes of demonstrating this to you. And then it's also going to send to email addresses. So it's got two separate email addresses. That is this.is.invalid. So a fake email address that will not work. And it's also going to my saved email. So the person I want to trigger this for should not have a team member home email address. So I'm going to go into John Sheridan and his home email is blank, which is brilliant. Now let's navigate to the WX. Now I am logged in as Steve Pendleton, who is John's manager. So I can simply create a change request for my team member. I'm going to create a new one and I'm going to do it as a salary change. Now, if I search for John, there he is. And I'm going to do a salary increase by percentage and I'm going to use 5%. And he's getting it for his performance effective the 1st of November 2025. Now let's press next to follow this through and submit that request. Now, if I jump back to the HR portal, I then want to navigate back to my action event patterns, back into the alert email pattern that John Sheridan sits on, and see if I've got anything in my action event log. And brilliant, we can see we have 4 items. So that HR request email has tried to send 4 times. So we had the team member home, which failed because the team member home address was not found. We had my email that said this.is.invalid, and that's an invalid email address, and that has not sent. Whereas the other 2, the manager sent successfully, and also my Sage email that I entered manually, that has sent successfully. If I want to find further information, I can click into the log number and I can see the details of the recipient and the error message, invalid email address. It would probably be useful to put the recipient on this list view, but I'm limited to 4 items in my trial log, it seems, so you've got to pick which ones might be most appropriate. You might want to get rid of the event potentially for this quick overview. Now, this list view, you can filter it, but it's quite manually, so I could do it by outcome is failure. If I wanted to see all failures, that'll bring those up. But these are just quick filters. They're not going to save each time. I can't create a new list view. So what you might find useful to do is create a tab. So when you go to your 9 dots, if you search for action event logs, it comes up here. Unfortunately, it does not at the moment. So I'm just going to quickly show you how to do that. And again, you need to navigate into Setup. In the quick find on the left, if you search for tabs, and then what you're going to do is create a new tab. You simply select the object, so we want the action event log object. You must select a tab style, although it doesn't appear anywhere. It's old UI, so don't waste time picking the perfect symbol. And then if you press next. First thing you should do is set the default to off for this tab. And then if you select the second radio button, you can scroll right down to the bottom to turn it on for the systems administrator and any other relevant profiles. If you then press next, I don't want this to appear on my custom apps. So my custom apps are, if I go to my 9 dots, I've got one for the people team. I just want it searchable. So I'm going to uncheck all those boxes and click save. Now that tab has been created, if I go to my 9 dots, I can now see action event logs appear. If I change my list view to all and give that a pin. As standard, it's got everything. If I check my filters, I can see it's all action event logs. And I can click the settings icon to increase the fields that are visible here. So the action event pattern, the action event, the description, the error message, the event, the outcome, who it's going to, and who it was triggered by. They're probably the most useful fields. Let's give that a save. So that's really helpful, but the great thing about having it as a tab is you can create different list views. So if I click the cog icon again, I can then click new and create a list for failures and save that. And I can amend my filters to show all action events where the outcome equals failure. And then I will want to select my fields to display. So I pull across the relevant information. So I save that. Now I can see all that information, and you can create these list views for successes as well. You could also create them for different action event patterns, all sorts really. So this might be an easier way to quickly look at and filter them. You also might find that some of the action event recipient icons reference a team member ID. So here we've got a long 18-character number. To find out who that is, what I can do is I can pop that in the web browser after .com/, and then it will take me to John Sheridan's record, because that's who the action event was triggered for and who the recipient is. If I wanted to look up for, I know that John Sheridan hasn't received an email and I don't know why, you could even in your filters add one to say recipient contains that ID. So there's all sorts of ways you can use those list views, and hopefully that's really helpful to you. So just to cover off kind of some of the possible error scenarios that come out of those action event logs. So you saw a couple of examples in that demonstration, including kind of missing emails, invalid emails. They can also appear for template passing issues and other email sending errors. So I think that's going to be really useful for diagnosing any issues you have with action events. Just wanted to note as well, as I mentioned in the video, you've still got your Salesforce email log that you can use, and also it's worth enabling DKIM if you haven't already to help prevent any email issues from occurring. So now moving on to enhanced objectives and feedback. This is probably quite an overwhelming table for the screen, but I just wanted to flash it up. It can be found on the Help Centre just to do a bit of a comparison between the legacy objectives, which is old functionality in Sage People now, the current enhanced objectives as you see them today, and then versus the actual new user interface for enhanced objectives, which is what we're releasing in this release. One thing to note is if you are still on legacy objectives, we will be deprecating them in the future. The exact date isn't confirmed yet. We'll give you plenty of notice, but it's probably going to be in around a year's time. So if you are still using that, please do think about transitioning to enhanced objectives. Just wanted to call out some of the updates that this user interface brings anyway. I will go through them in the video, but I think the main benefit of this is that it doesn't take you into that separate window to view your objectives, making it hard to navigate back to other WX processes, and overall it's just not the best user experience. So it's all going to be in one screen and make that user experience a lot more seamless. The other really nice thing that it does is it respects your current branding. So if you've got brand colors defined for the WX, which you will, at the moment the buttons and enhanced objectives show as just blue no matter what your branding is, but this, all the buttons etc. will show in your brand colors, which is a really nice addition. The other thing I'm going to call out, which we talk about in the demonstration, is you can configure different fields for different policies. So if you've got employees in the US and they need to have some additional objective questions compared to, say, the UK, then you can configure that, which is, again, a very highly requested customer idea. However, it's worth noting, if you enable this functionality, you'll only be able to create bulk objectives, so objectives for your whole team, where there is no field set overrides, i.e. everyone's still got the same form, or all your direct reports are on the same policy. So that's definitely a consideration if you're looking into that. But as I mentioned, I'm going to show the demonstration in a second. Before I do, I just wanted to flash up a screenshot of the legacy objectives, because I know there might be some people on this call that aren't sure what objectives they're using. So if your objective looks like this, you're on the legacy objectives and need to think about transitioning. If you're on this user interface, this is the enhanced objectives, and this is the one that we're still using the same process in the background, but we're updating the user interface to it and making a few tweaks to it. So with that, let's show you the new updated enhanced objectives user interface and how to enable it. You'll have just seen the user interface for the first iteration of enhanced objectives. However, this has since had a system refresh. This isn't turned on by default, however. You'll need to switch it on if you want to use the new UI. So I'm just going to show you how this is done. First, you navigate into Setup. Then in the quick find on the left, you want to search for Installed Packages and click into it. You then need to scroll down until you find your Human Capital Management package and click Configure to the left-hand side. Once in the package, you need to scroll down until you come across the Features section, which is just here. And what you need to ensure is you've got this one turned on, as I already have, Objectives and Feedbacks in WX. So once that is checked, you can scroll up and select Save. You then navigate to the self-service portal and navigate to your performance and objectives. First of all, it brings you into the same window as the rest of the WX, leaving your WX service items on the left-hand side. Previously, this took you into a separate window, making it hard to navigate back. The loading time was also fairly slow due to the separate screen. Some of the key features I'd like to point out is that you can now add a HR notice board to the top of your objectives page. This was not possible previously. You can also see your objectives categorized. So at the top, you see an expanded list of your current objectives. These are anything that exist in the current performance review window. I can see which of them are active. I can also view shared objectives, including those that I'm a watcher of, and then I can also view my past objectives, ones that are outside of this performance review window. I've also got some fields here to show me information relating to that objective. These fields can be configured via a field set, and that is called Team Member Objectives List View. If I want to add an additional field to this page, then I can just drag this down into the field set and it will appear. However, I don't have any data in my additional fields, so I'm not going to do that. But I just talk you through adding an objective. You will continue to see the new user interface. In order to talk you through adding an objective, I'm going to log in as one of Steve Pendleton's direct reports, Kim Sloan. Now I'm logged in as Kim Sloan, I'm going to navigate to my own objectives. From here, you can see I've got 2 active objectives. I'm going to add a third. I'm just going to copy and paste the objective I prepared for Kim earlier. I'm going to set the dates to 2025. So they're in the current performance review year. I can add a weight to the objective if I wish. And then I'm also going to fill in these fields, which are actually unique to the US policy. So resources required, risks and challenges, is the objective smart? Those are unique to the US because they need to be asked those specific questions. Now I'm going to activate and reveal that. Now this objective has been activated straight away and not gone through an approval process, and this is due to my policy settings that the team member can activate without the manager confirming their objective. If I now log out as Kim Sloan, I'm going to jump in as one of the UK-based employees. And you can see here from my list view that if I just sort this by alphabetical order, Kim is the only one on the USA policy override. Everyone else is based in the UK. So I've just got to jump in as one of Steve's other direct reports. I'm going to choose John Sheridan. Now I'm logged in as John Sheridan, I'm going to navigate to my objectives. John also has 3 active objectives. I'm going to add an extra one. I want to develop my presentation and storytelling skills. I'm going to pop in the description and I'm going to add a couple of tasks for John. If I scroll down, I'm again going to set the dates to this calendar year. And then if I scroll to the bottom, I can see I don't have those fields that Kim Sloan had. So I have is this objective smart? That applies for everyone, but I do not have the risks and the challenges, nor do I have the resources required. Now, I'm going to submit those changes. Now I can see that has been submitted, but it's only in team member draft status. This is because on the UK policy, we have approvals turned on for our objectives. This is part of a previous release. Just to show you where these settings are, I'm going to log out of John Sheridan. And then I'm going to navigate to the HR portal and search for policies in my 9 dots. If I click into my USA policy and click onto the Performance Management tab at the top, I can see I've got objectives turned on, but I do not have confirm before activating switched on. However, if I navigate to my UK full HCM policy and to the Performance Management tab, I have these extra settings enabled. Details of what these do can be found on the Help Centre. Whilst we're on the policies, the other thing I wanted to show you was how we enabled those additional fields for the USA policy. I can see I've got field set mappings. And in here, I have one for US objectives. I'm going to talk you through this process for another country. You need to start by navigating to Setup, and then to your Object Manager, and searching for the Enhanced Objective object. You then need to navigate down the left-hand side to find your field sets. Once on this screen, you need to select New at the top right-hand side of the page. Let's create a new field set, and let's call this France Additional Fields. Where is this used? And I'm going to say France Full HCM Policy. And let's save that. Now I can add additional fields to the France form. So, for example, if I just want to ask my French employees a specific question, I can either create a new custom field for it, or if my field already exists, I can find it from the table at the top and drag it down to the page. I'm going to use the same field as I did for the US, just for this demonstration's purpose. So, potential risks and challenges. I'm now going to save that. Now that that field set is created, I can navigate back to my policies and back into my French policy. If I again scroll to the bottom of the page, I've got no field set mapping here at current. I just need to select the new one. Then I give this a name. I'm going to call mine French objectives. I need to select the object that the override needs to occur on. Now you need to scroll right to the bottom of the list to find these ones that begin with SPP, ER, F, MG, MT. And it's the one for objective that I want. I'm not going to do this on the objective review. So let's select objective, and then my field set that I want to replace is the additional fields, which is standard, with the France additional fields. I then want this field set override to apply to everyone because I don't want the team member to see different fields to the manager. I want the objective form to be the same for both. And then I'm going to click Save. That will now be live for my French employees. And that is how you set up specific questions for specific policies. Should you have approvals on for activating your objectives? Currently in the existing user interface, if you mark a task as complete, which isn't actually amending the body of the objective itself, it goes back through the approval process and sets the objective into team member draft. However, with the new user interface, there's an improvement to this. So, for example, I'm logged in as John Sheridan. If I click into my volunteer leave objective and I edit this to mark one of my tasks as in progress and click Save, that change has been submitted, but it remains active rather than in draft. However, if I edit something else in the objective, such as deleting half of the description, and then I click Submit Changes, that objective goes back into team member draft because I've made a significant amendment to the body of the objective. Now if I jump back into the self-service portal as a manager, you can see under my team, I now have an option to see my team objectives. As you can see, I have an overview of how many active objectives each of my direct reports have. I can also see how they're progressing in their task and also their scores. The score field is a new feature designed to give a numerical value on how your employees are tracking against their progress. Let's have a look at John Sheridan's objectives. As I can see, he's got 2 draft objectives and 2 active objectives. The draft ones I am now able to view and approve as his manager. I can also complete objective reviews. If I click into this last objective at the bottom of the list, I now have this section for reviews and I can add a review as I could previously. I can mark his progress as ongoing, above track, or any of the other options. I can add a comment. I can add the score, which is a new feature. And I can also amend the review date for the objective. I'm going to change that to the 1st of December, and I'm going to add a comment. I'm going to add that review. That has been added. Now, if I click back into that objective, I can then see my objective reviews, and I can keep adding them as I please. The other functionality I have as a manager is that I can create bulk objectives for my whole entire team. This existed in the previous user interface. Now I can choose to select all of my direct reports automatically, all of my cross reports, or I can add them individually. Let's create an objective for all of my direct reports. I can then delete out the ones I don't want. I've also now got the ability to clone my objective. In the previous functionality, this was labelled something slightly different. It was labelled Use Objectives as Template, which is in short what this does. It's not the same as an aligned objective. It allows you to use one of your existing objectives as a template for the objective for your team. And I could amend that accordingly or cascade it as it is. The other thing I didn't know earlier is that if you scroll down on the Team View page, you can also view a list of your cross reports and their objectives in the summary window. You've also got this option here to show updates to give you a feed of changes that have been made to the objectives. Now let's move on to talk about conversations and feedback. You may have noticed that we now have these tabs similar to the My Profile tab, so that you can navigate between your objectives, one-to-one notes, your feedback that you have been given, and then also feedback you have provided to other colleagues. One-to-one notes is simply conversations rebranded. Before, it was unclear what conversations should be used for. It's not a live chat, it's more of an area for you and your manager to record your conversations, so there is a record of them taking place. If you do not like the naming convention of one-to-one notes, these can be updated in custom labels. If I navigate to the next tab, this is where I can see my feedback. This is very similar to the functionality we had before. However, it's had a few enhancements. For example, if I go and create a new feedback request, I can again search for anyone in my organisation. Let's select John Sheridan, my direct report. I can select a feedback template or populate my own questions as I could previously. However, the changes are when you create your own questions, the character limit has increased up to 500 characters. Before this was limited, and we've had some customer feedback to enhance this. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to use an existing feedback template, and I'm going to add a due date. I can also give feedback where a request is due. So I've got one that's in draft, and I've got one that's not started. Let's go into the latter. I'm going to copy and paste the feedback I created earlier for John. Now, if I hadn't been prepared and created this earlier, I would have to paste this information from a document. However, now we have the ability to start completing our feedback and save it as a draft. This means I can come back and perfect the feedback at any moment, especially if I'm struggling on what to write in a constructive but positive way. When I'm happy with my feedback, I can go back in, edit my draft, update it, and then submit that feedback to John Sheridan. I can also view my older feedback down the bottom of the screen. The other addition to the feedback area of the system is I now have a team view of my feedback. Here I can see an overview of who's awaiting feedback and who needs to provide a response and when they last received their feedback. I can then click into any of my employees from here to review the feedback request forms completed. So just on that one of the features we mentioned was the ability to now add HR notice boards to the objective screen. Just wanted to call out, without going through fully how to add a HR notice board, as we've got lots of resources out there for this, that there is now an additional field called just process, where you select whether it goes on the enhanced objective page or whether you want that to go on the feedback page. So just watch out for that extra field. I know when I first tried this, I kept ignoring that was there because it's new, and didn't know why it wasn't appearing. So just to call that out. Another thing to note is that translations now work slightly differently. Before, they were text files and static resources, but now we're managing them through custom labels. So I'm just going to walk you through how to create custom labels for one-to-one notes, changing them back to conversations, just as an example, but it can be used the same way for multiple languages. Just to quickly show you how you use the custom label feature to update your WX translations with regards to objectives and feedback. First, you need to navigate to Setup. Then, in the quick find on the left, if you search for Custom Labels, and then click into it. Now here, I see a long list of different labels we have in the system that are available to translate. This can be quite overwhelming to look at, and sometimes trying to find the right label can be a bit of a needle in a haystack. So I'm going to show you how to create list views to assist you with your translations. So, first of all, I want to look at the WX to see which labels I want to translate. In this example, I'm going to use one-to-one notes and convert them back to conversations, just in case this is something you'd like to do. So, my one-to-one notes tab, the value I can see here is 121 notes. So I'm just going to copy that. Then, if I navigate back to my custom labels, I can then create a new view. And I'm going to call this one-to-one notes. It doesn't really matter what you call this is just for your reference. The next thing I want to do is filter by a particular field. The field that is displayed in the WX is also known as the value, so this is what I want to use. Then I'm going to use my operator as contains, because I might have multiple labels that refer to one-to-one notes. If I use contains, it should pick up all of them. And then just paste my value as I copied and pasted it from the WX. I'm then going to click Save. Now I can see a list of all my labels that show one-to-one notes. So here I can see the description in the system. 2 simply say one-to-one notes. Then one more says no one-to-one notes, and then you've got this employee has no one-to-one notes. So let's just click into this last one as an example. Now, when I look at this screen, it looks like I can't do anything, and it says it's a managed label. But to amend what this value says, what you need to do is create a new translation. And this is the same as if you're translating into different languages, as well as just naming it something different. So here I want to click New Local Translation or Override. I select my language. For me, because I'm just changing the label itself, I'm going to keep it in English, but if you're translating to another language such as French, you would need to select that. And then I'm going to put in my translation text. Now, if this just said one-to-one notes, as my first 2 items on my list view did, I would just type in what I want to replace it with, so conversations. However, you always want to pay attention to the master label text up here. And what I do is I copy and paste the whole thing into here, and then I put my conversations over anywhere it says one-to-one notes, so that the message still makes sense, just replaces that tiny phrase that I want to. I then click Save, and then go back to my custom labels. I'm back in my list view. So I'm just going to translate one more that's just a simple one, just to show you the difference. So one-to-one notes, New Local Translation or Override. Language for me is English, and then here I'm going to paste in just conversations to replace one-to-one notes, and then click Save. If I jump back to the WX and give that a refresh, you can then see my header has changed to conversations. This one still exists, and that will be because I haven't done the second one-to-one note translation on my list just here. So you want to make sure you do all 4 of them And that can be if you're doing other translations as well. So if you're renaming objectives to KPIs, you might want to look at labels that reference objectives. And that is how you complete a translation. Perfect. So moving on to the next feature then, we have the recruit file transfer. Now we're going to talk about the file carry over from Recruit. So let's jump to the Recruit app. And I'm going to go into a specific vacancy for Sales Executives Nordics in my trial log. And then go to my applications list. And click into Peter Jones, who is the one who is hired. So when a candidate's successful application leads to creating a team member record, i.e. they are hired, the system allows the transfer of files such as CVs, cover letters, and right to work documentation. Once they are set to hired, this button called Link Files will appear on your screen. Once you click that, you will see this pop-up window that allows you to choose whether you transfer the documentation to the employment record, so the notes and attachments in the HR portal. You've also got two options here, show to manager and show to team member. This functionality allows you to link the documentation to manager notes, which is often renamed as employee documents in customers' organisations. So show to manager will create a manager note that is visible to the manager, and show to team member will create a manager note that will be visible to the team member themselves. So what I'm going to do for Peter Jones is I'm going to create everything on the employment record. And then I'm also going to create manager notes that say show to manager for the CV. And then I'm going to do show to team member for the right to work documentation only. And if I want to add a comment, I can put that here too. Now, if I click save, I'm going to search for the team member record for Peter Jones. And then I can go to his employment record. And then I can see those notes and attachments have added here. I can also see from the related list at the top that the manager notes also exist. And I've got one shown to the manager and one shown to the team member. Now, if I just navigate to Peter Jones's user record, and log in as Peter Jones. Now, if I go to work details and employee documents, I can then see my manager note that was created by the recruiter and download that documentation. So just on that recruit file transfer, in order for that link files button to appear to enable you to create those notes and attachments or manager notes, just wanted to make you aware that the team member needs to be in the state where they're ready to create a team member record. So in your recruit installed package, you have this setting here, candidate status to create team member. So mine is set to hired, and we think most customer orgs would be. And then in your configure selection process, under your hired stage, you'd also need that set hired checkbox ticked for that link files button to appear. So if you're not seeing it, it might be to do with your setup in the back end. Now, moving on to an item that I'm super excited about, and it's one that I know that I really wanted when I was a customer a while ago. So let's jump into time off colours. The time off colours enhancement improves the visual clarity of the WX absence calendar by allowing administrators to assign distinct colours to different absence types. This update supports better calendar readability and helps users quickly identify absence categories. As you can see from Steve Pendleton's current absence calendar, he currently has 3 calendar colours: orange for the public holidays, green for vacation, and blue for absence. So this update will allow you to add another up to 5 colours for different absence reasons. However, it is important to note that we are unable to change the colours for public holidays, vacation, and absence assignments. The system also won't allow the addition of new colours in addition to the standard pick list options. So let's jump into the configuration. If I navigate to Setup in my HR portal, I then need to navigate to the Object Manager and to the Absence Accrual Rule object. Firstly, I need to ensure that the calendar category is now on my page layout and select the top layout for the Absence Accrual Rule layout. You then need to find the calendar category field, which is a new field here at the top of the screen, and then drag it down to somewhere on your page layout. Once you've done that, click Save. The next thing you need to do is navigate to your fields and relationships and find the calendar category field, which is just here. And you can see I've got my pick list values, which are the 5 new colours we enable. I want to assign the pink value to my absence type working from home. So I'm just going to click the category and then I'm going to edit the colour pink. And I'm going to change the label to working from home, making sure it matches my spelling on my absence accrual rule. Now that has been relabeled, I'm going to go to my 9 dots and search for my absence accrual patterns and click into the relevant absence pattern. For me, it is UK absence. If I click View All down the bottom here, I'll be able to see all my absence accrual rules. I now click into the rule name for working from home. I can now see the calendar category field here to amend and assign. So I'm going to select working from home, which is the pink one that I've renamed, and click Save. If you cannot see the calendar category here straight away, you might need to log out and log in again for the page to refresh, or it might be the second option in this screen. So if I go back to page layouts, you might find it's the second one, not the top one like it is in my trial log. Now, if I just give my absence calendar a refresh as Steve Pendleton, you can now see I have a legend item for working from home. So let's go book a working from home absence, and let's do it from next week. Let's go the 20th to the 22nd of October. He's then going to select his reason, and we're going to save that. If you scroll down now, I can see I've got pending working from home in the pink. If I just jump back into the back end, I'm going to manually approve that absence record. By just entering an approval date. And then if I go back and refresh the calendar, I can now see the solid pink on the calendar. And that is how to configure time off colours. So very conscious of time, so I'm going to be quite quick with the last few bits, hopefully. But just want to show you a screenshot of all the new absence colours because I didn't walk through configuring them all in the demonstration. Just wanted to note as well, you can group things. So I've created a category for family leave, which includes maternity and paternity leave. So lots you can do there. One thing to note though is that the colours currently don't respect inherited absence rules. So if you've grouped absence patterns together for all your other absences and a different one for annual leave that inherits from it, you won't be able to change the colours as it stands right now. Now I'm just going to quickly move on to configuring the permission sets, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. In order to use and set up some of the new features and functionality within the 25.2 release, you need to assign a permission set group for systems administrators. To do this, you navigate to Setup, and then in the quick find on the left, if you search for permission set groups. You then want to create a new permission set group and give that a label. I've called mine Systems Administrator, and then I'm going to click Save. Now I choose which permission sets I include in this group by clicking this button, Permission Sets in Group. And then I want to add permission set. I then want to scroll down until I see the permission sets that start with Sage People HR Administrator. The 9 I want to select are Sage People HR Administrator Performance Management, Sage People HR Administrator Async, Sage People HR Administrator Compensation Planning Configure, Sage People HR Administrator FDL, Sage People HR Administrator FHCM, Sage People HR Administrator FPay, Sage People HR Administrator FRecruit, Sage People HR Administrator FResource, Sage People HR Administrator FTA. You may not need the Recruit and Resource one if you're not using Recruit and Resource Planner, but as it's your systems administrator, there's no harm in adding them anyway. Then you need to scroll back to the top and click Add. And that is done. So if I just click Done, and then back to Permission Set Group, I can go here to manage the assignments. But first, if I just go back to Permission Set Groups, it won't let me do anything until the status of this permission set group is set to updated, like the one below is. It's currently saying updating. So you just want to give it a minute to make sure all those permission sets are added in the group. Still showing as updating. And now it is set to updated. So let's go back into that. And then click the Manage Assignments button. And then Add Assignment to assign this to my system administrators. Now, to easily find your admins, if you change the All Users list to Admin Users, then you should see all your admins available. I've only got the one in Steve Pendleton, so I'm going to select him, press Next, and click Assign. And that's sorted. You should now be good to go to set up the new features and functionality of the 25.2 release. So I'm very conscious of time. I am going to be running a couple of minutes over, so if you've got to drop at 4, then feel free, I won't be offended. And then Lucy, the rest of this will be recorded. Yes.
Lucy, just before we run into the next one, important information for the rollout into production. So the system, this release is available in your sandbox if you already opted in. If you would like to test it in sandbox, then do log a support case and they'll be able to upgrade your sandbox to the latest this version so you can test it. We do recommend this for all our releases. And we are planning to push the production out to our first wave of customers next week on Wednesday. And then there are 2 subsequent waves. One will be the week of the 3rd and one will be the week of the 17th of November. So if there are any reasons why you would want to pick one of those 3 waves, it is your choice. Again, a support case is the best way to pick between those 3 waves. So that's next week on Wednesday, the 22nd, the week of the 3rd of November, and the week of the 17th of November. So if you have any preference at all, holidays, system admins, things like that, Thanksgiving, any of those influences, do let the support team know which your preference would be.
Perfect.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thanks, Kay. Really key information there. So thanks for calling that out before people might need to drop. Like I say, I'm going to continue. We've just got the HR request creation, which is in beta phase anyway. And then I was just going to talk through a couple of the resolved issues. So I'll carry on, and it's recorded if you need to drop. Now to show you the last feature in our 25.2 release, which is currently in a beta phase, as there's a couple of improvements we'd like to make to it before making it a general release. So this one is about HR request. Let's show you the current functionality. First of all, I'm going to navigate to Steve Pendleton's employment record just to show you some existing change requests and how the form looks as it stands. At the moment, if I want to create a change request for Steve as a HR manager, I can simply press the new button from here. When I do that, no matter what change reason I select, all the fields that are available to me remain the same. As a HR manager, I need to know which fields are changing and which ones are relevant to a promotion. This means that there's room for error, and the HR manager could enter information that they don't need to enter and it's irrelevant and therefore creates inefficiencies, or it means that they might miss a field because it's not as easy to make fields required when they're required for a very specific change reason, although it is achievable via validation rules. From a user experience perspective as well, this makes the change request seem a lot more complex than it needs to be. As you can see, I've got many fields on my page layout here. Let me talk you through switching on the new beta feature. So let's navigate into Setup. I'm then going to go to my Object Manager and find the HR request object, which I can find here. If I then navigate down to my Buttons, Links and Actions tab, I want to find the button for New, and I want to click the drop down to the right and Edit. At the moment, this is using a Lightning Experience Override that is the Salesforce Classic functionality. However, to use the new functionality, you want to select Lightning Component, and then in the pick list, you want to select HR Request Creation Wizard Container, and then click Save. If I jump back to Steve Pendleton's employment record and its HR request list view, and just give that a refresh, you'll be able to see when I click the new button now, I'm presented with the PMW, People Management Workflow style screen, where the HR manager is presented with the different change reason types. If you don't use these currently in the self-service portal, then these would need to be configured. Details on how to do this can be found on the Help Center. So let's use promotion as an example and click through to this screen. As you can see, this form looks a lot less overwhelming and it's much simpler to complete. I'm only presented with the fields that are relevant to promotion changes. However, as I mentioned earlier, this is in a beta release as there are a couple of features that we'd like to include before putting it to general release. One of these features is the fact that there is no way to bypass the approval process using the current form. Currently, a lot of HR managers will enter the approved date so that it doesn't trigger to go through an approval process, as this may have been approved outside of the system already. The other restriction is that if I go back a step, these HR request types, you can only see which ones you've configured to be available for the manager in the self-service portal. Therefore, it doesn't allow you to have different change request types for the HR team versus the manager. And we know this is something that our customers would love to see in the future. As a result, we are going to be putting that into a future release so that the uptake of this feature can be much greater. However, that being said, if your managers and your HR managers only need to see, say, these 6 types on screen or the ones you currently have configured, and they don't need any extra functionality and they don't need to put through any different change request types that aren't available to managers, and you're happy for it to go through the set approval process as it would if the manager entered the request, then you may be able to start using this feature straight away. However, as with all our new features, please do test them in Sandbox before turning them on in your production environment. So just moving on to some resolved issues. So I won't go through all of these, they're on the Help Centre, but just wanted to highlight that now we've got improved accessibility of the candidate portal for the use of screen readers, and the translation issue for enhanced objectives category is fixed. So they're the main ones I wanted to highlight. Just want to say a huge thank you to all our customers who've been testing in Sandbox of this release. Make sure if you do identify any issues or something's not working as you expect, you check out the known issues section on the Help Centre to see if it's already there, or log a support case. But that's it from me. Kay, did you have anything to add?
Not really, apart from I think I'm a better system admin now after the session. There's so much detail. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lucy.
No worries. Apologies. The detail probably meant we ran over, but hopefully it was useful.
Yeah. So if you need anything, support cases are there for you, and the CSMs are happy to help if you would like to reach out. But yeah, thank you very much for attending, and yeah, we will speak to you on the next one. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.